Okay guys, I'm going to show you how to use oil pastels if you've never used oil pastels. I think most of you have, but this will be a good refresher if you started and you're struggling. So there's two different types of ways that you can use watercolor. Did I say oil pastels? I just did oil pastels. I'm doing watercolor. Sorry if I said oil pastels. There's two different ways to use watercolor. One is called wet on dry and one is called wet on wet. So wet on wet would be where you would wet the paper and then you wet the the watercolor and then you put them together. It tends to bleed more when you do that. It creates a really fun kind of blending effect, but it's really loose and not as controlled. Wet on dry means you're painting wet paint onto a dry piece of paper, and it doesn't blend quite as much, or it's not as free blending, I guess I should say. So I'll show you wet on wet to get started. And here I've started with my light sources up here, so my shadows are going to be down here, my midtones and my highlights are going to be up here. And with the watercolors, man, I can't stop saying oil pastels. With the watercolor, I'm going to try to create a full range of value. So I'm just using these colors, and I do have black, and I may use a little bit of it, but you all know I tend to not use a lot of black. So to get started, I'm just going to wet the paper where I want the watercolors to blend. And watercolors are meant to be very free-flowing and like a loose fluid. Now, another thing before I start, I should have said this first, but don't ever use the colors directly out of the tube, basically. Always mix your colors. So all of you guys always complain about these being so nasty and disgusting, when in reality, you should be appreciative. I always open these, and the more colors that I find here, the happier I am, because they're already kind of pre-mixed in unique colors. So your goal is to take these colors and to create your own colors down here. So don't feel like these are gross, because you can just mix colors out of them. So like, we know I like purple. I did a piece yesterday with this, so I kind of already created this purple down here. But I want it to be kind of a darker purple, so I'm going to mix in quite a bit of purple. Now the only thing that does stink is when these get dirty, because people don't clean their brush between. Add some black. And then I'm gonna also do a little bit of blue. I just did it. If that's okay, nobody else is using this. Oh, too much black. Okay, so now I have a really dark purple, which is good because I wanted it to be wet, or I wanted it to be a dark value. Okay, so I'm going to add some more water just in case that dried. And I want you to just kind of see how this will now just kind of blend into everywhere that I already got the paper wet. And it's real subtle and soft. And if I sat here for a while and let you watch this, see how it's kind of bleeding together? And it creates a really nice, fluid, flowy effect. And I can add water and then it will just continue to bleed. But I could also come in here, do I want to be this crazy? And I could just add, see how nice that is? It just kind of bleeds into the other paper. But also, this means you've got to give up quite a bit of control and just kind of let this happen. So I can add water and let it bleed together. So now I'm going to come in here and create kind of like a middle value of like a lighter pink. And so this is called wet on dry now, because now I'm painting directly on to a dry surface, but I'm letting this stuff kind of bleed together. So using watercolor, if you're slow thinking, it could tend to dry. So if you're ever sitting there and you're not sure, just add some water so that you'll have that ability to add another color without having these sharp lines that are that won't blend together as well. Okay, I'm just gonna do real light up here. since I kind of did this wet on wet down here, it's going to take longer to dry, so hopefully I can get through this. So since I wet that, and now that's going to be my highlight area. I need everything else to be darker around it, and I'm going to go in and just kind of dab this with my paintbrush so that there's watercolor there, but it's still just a really light value. And with watercolor, it's always fun to just play with the colors and let there be a lot of color, not just stick with one color palette. Since this is all still wet, see how I'm just kind of adding it and letting it do its thing? I'm going to dab up some of this water down here just because it's super wet. So I like to just kind of get a base color palette down, and then I go in and really push my values once things have kind of dried up. And this will look pretty different once it's all dry. So it's kind of a fun surprise. I'm a big fan of drawing over watercolor, so getting it down and then putting Prismacolor over it, color pencils, or pen to just really push those values. Because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get as dark as I like. I'm just impatient, really. See that green? I didn't make that green, but it's really pretty. So I'm just going to use it. Thanks to whoever made that. Also, if you get too dark in an area and you're quick enough, you can just put water over it and then blot it out with your paper towel, and it'll take the color away in the value. So, nice little trick you can do. See how with watercolor you just kind of go in layers and just slowly. I just said I didn't use black, and then I just used a lot of black, but mixing with other colors, right? Okay, and then now I would come in and make a shadow. And then I would wait until that dried and then be able to come in here and make a nice fine line to separate the two. And I would go over this again with a darker value, but if I did it right now, that dark value is going to bleed into the shadow and I don't want that to happen. So this is your little tutorial on watercolor. Just play, have fun, loosen up, don't be too controlled. Just kind of let the color go where it wants to go and then reevaluate it as it dries, and then just take your time and go back and forth until you're happy. And remember, full range of value creates the illusion of form. And so whatever you're drawing, if you want it to look 3D, you need your dark darks, your midtones, and your highlights.